Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Annette Marianaccio, and is a investigator, researcher of the afterlife. Hi, Annette.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me. Nice to
Thank
be
you for
here.
coming. So you can start wherever you like. I'm interested to hear what you found out.
So, I'll, s- my background is CPA, so I'm a certified public accountant. So I really have a very left brain, analytical, detail oriented, left brain dominant. And I would not say that I was so much skeptical of the afterlife, but I really hadn't thought about it. And in 2006, my mother-in-law died, and she was intent on proving to me that she was actually still here.
Did she say anything before she died, or is this just all after that she's trying to?
All
Okay.
after. So I was very sad at her funeral, as the whole family was. But I really thought, when you go, and that's it. I did not really tune into the fact that maybe we still go on. So it was a big surprise to me. So at any rate, and I'll back up and tell you exactly the details of it, but the short story of it is that after she proved to me that she was still here, I then finally accepted that. And after I accepted it, I was like, I don't understand. I have a really big question. If we go on, then what the heck are we doing here? I don't understand what this is about. I mean, it just made no sense to me. So I spent, as you said, researching. I spent about 4 years just researching everything afterlife, everything I could get my hands on. And really, once you start looking into it, there is a lot of literature out there and a lot of people who know about the afterlife and live differently because they know about the afterlife, etc. So I really was able to find a lot of detail about it. And I sort of would incorporate into my brain, into myself, the things that made sense and resonated with me. And I discounted the things that really were a little bit too far out there or didn't make sense to me.
Hmm.
But after about 4 years, I sort of felt satisfied. I was like, something, I understand how we connect to the other side, and I'm comfortable with that, and I'll just live my life a little differently, and go on my merry way. But as the universe would have it, over the next 4 or 5 years, I was continually put in the path of people who would benefit from a little piece of what I had learned. So whether it was in my work life or my personal life, somebody would be going through something or would be curious, and I would be like, oh, I know why that's happening, because blah, 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 and I would tell them. And then what started happening is a lot of people would saying to me, oh my goodness, you changed my life. That was a pivotal piece of information you gave me. Thank you so much. And I started getting all this like positive feedback about my knowledge. And for an accountant, it's not like I'm a doctor or an attorney. I do work in healthcare. It's not like I'm a doctor or a nurse where you change people's lives and you're constantly getting like, oh, you saved my life. Being an accountant, sort of like an attorney, I'm not used to that kind of feedback. And so when I was getting a lot of that sort of you changed my life feedback, I said, something, I think I'm supposed to take what I've learned and summarize it into a book so that it's easily digestible and relatable to people, because my skill set, even at work, is to take very elusive topics and make them something that everybody can understand. That's what I do at work. I mean, that's my skill set. And so I was like, I think I'm supposed to take this massive topic and just skinny it down and write it for the layperson and get it out there. So last year,
This is a wonderful
um,
idea.
yeah, so last year I put my mind to it, and I published. Actually, it was in 2020, having nothing to do with COVID. I wrote it, and then in 2021 I published it, and I put it out there early 2021. And the way the universe works, the first copy was printed on my mother-in-law's birthday, because that's how the universe works. But I didn't, before 10 years ago, I wouldn't have understood that, but now I understand it. And within 3 weeks of having written it, the power of social media, um, I got an email from a woman out in Seattle, Oregon, and I live in New York, so there's no way I would, have ever reached her before. And she said, I just want to thank you for writing your book. I lost my son, early 20s, I think she said, 3 years ago. And I've been struggling and reading so many books about the afterlife, and your book really makes sense. And it just changed my whole perspective. Thank you so much for writing it. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm done. I'm like, I didn't need another person to read it. Like that's the whole,
it, right?
that's it. That's the whole, the whole purpose was I reached this woman and helped her. And I never would have if I hadn't written the book and published it and put it out there. So I was very, very satisfied. Now, since then, thousands of people have actually read my book, and it's helped a lot of people. I have a lot of people reaching out to me saying, you really changed my perspective on things, and I appreciate what you taking the time to write the book, et cetera, et cetera. And so I realized that, part of my purpose was to put that book out there for people so that they have just sort of a layperson's realistic, relatable understanding, as I do, not only of the afterlife, but more so how it pertains to us here. So that's sort of my overview. Now, since then, also, not has it also been read by thousands of people and helped a lot of people all over the world, which is so great. But I get to be on. I'm interviewed and I get to meet wonderful people like yourself, and once. Like I have a website, so once the people who read my book tap into my website, they see my interview, and they then go to that person's channel or station, and they get to expand their universe so much more. It's like exponential. I've done, several interviews too, so that opens a portal up for people also. So anybody who's interested in anything afterlife and wants sort of the, a practical reading of it, I tell everybody, go to my website. Even if you don't buy my book, just go to the website and just tap into the interviews, and not only listen to my interview, but listen to other people that they've interviewed, and you'll see that, yeah, there's an afterlife.
Yeah, and
so,
not everybody learns by reading or can afford to buy books. To watch these talks, just in a simple terms, common sense, way where people can understand it. Because I have some guests on here, I don't know what they're talking about. All these new age terms, and it's Greek to me. I'm not from California. I'm in Ohio. I don't know what. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Some of them get mad, like, "What are you, stupid?" Or maybe because I don't know what you're talking about. I said, let me tell you something. You would come down here where I live, nobody would know what you're talking about, but they'd laugh you out of this town. So I'm being nice.
Right. And that's what I found when I was reading. There are books that are so elaborate that they are really difficult to follow. And I'm a numbers person. I'm a CPA, so I'm not a reader, and I can't even believe I wrote a book. So I'm a numbers person. I love numbers. So when I'm reading, it really needs to be something that I can understand and I can relate to. And so that's how I wrote this book. And that's the feedback that I'm getting too. There's nothing about it that is too elaborate or too like woo, too out there. It's very practical, because the way I learned about the afterlife was in a very practical way. What I learned is the way I learned is that my mother-in-law started the trail, but it was like breadcrumbs. She was like leaving breadcrumbs, and then I had spirit guides pipe in with dream downloads, which was like very bizarre to me, but occurred. So they were basically in a concerted way. My deceased relatives and spirit guides were really helping me during that 4 years, very methodically, because they knew I was not going to adopt this like wholeheartely. I really needed it to
ease us into it.
walk through a little at a time. So it was like another tidbit and another tidbit and another tidbit. And like I said, it took about 4 years. And by the end of that, I was like, something, I get it. And at the end of the day, what I understood was that this life here is a teeny tiny sliver of our whole soul's existence. But we're born, intentionally born, with these kinds of dunce caps on, or blinders to some extent, so that we think that what we're doing here is the end all be all. Because if we didn't think that, and we really understood all the time that what we're doing here is a sliver of our entire soul's existence, and really we may only be trying to move the needle of our soul's growth just a hair, instead of, as we think of things as so impactful here. If we were really to understand all the time how small our existence is here compared to our soul, we would be very distracted. We would feel like it's meaningless. What are we doing here? You know? And so we're intentionally born with egos, which has a negative connotation, but really is not negative. It's Einstein's theory of relativity. We can only relate to what we can relate to, and we relate to our ego. We're intentionally born with an ego so that we can hopefully all serve the purpose we're meant to serve for our soul while here on earth. And so those blinders are intentional to allow us to move the needle a little bit. So, once I understood that, which took me quite some time to understand, because once you understand that your soul is living this little sliver of your soul's existence, the next natural thing you have to understand is reincarnation. And that was something I did not want to have to understand at the beginning of this, but now I understand.
Was that through your research that you come to adapt that into your
Yes,
thinking?
absolutely. I mean, there's just no way that your soul can grow enough in this one life for it to evolve to where it needs to be.
I wonder why do we
So,
need to grow so much? I mean, what's the big deal? Can't we just stay here and play and have fun?
yeah, it's funny. I saw something came up on my Facebook recently that said, it was like this little kid eating cake, and it said, "Some of us come back for karma, but some of us just come back for the cake." And I can relate to that because cake's great. but at the end of the day, it is about having a little bit more fun here on Earth, because Earth is the only place that has this kind of sort of physical fun. But we naturally, our souls, all of our souls intrinsically want to grow. We all want to grow. We all want to be grow, even if it's just a little bit, and or help others grow. That's another thing too. We may not be here so much for us to grow. Sometimes we're here to help someone else grow. We're all sort of natural teachers, and teachers of our souls, and teachers to others,
I see so much of people, like say you're doing all the reading and research, and I know a lot of people that do that, and they come out with almost like a new religion based on what they read. You know.
Yeah, and I would say that was definitely true for me also, in terms of real religion and just sort of spiritual outlook on life. But my real religion, I was raised Roman Catholic, and around the time I was understanding everything about the afterlife is really when the Catholic Church was really under a lot of scrutiny because of the abuse of the priests.
Yes, people
So,
are getting disillusioned by their faith or religion, and they're turning to these books,
right.
finding their own religion, combination of all kinds of things. So it seems like everybody has their own religion now.
Right. So, and at the end of the day, religion was, built way back as a necessary situation to sort of control massive amounts of populations. I mean, that's what schools are. That's what governments are. That's what churches are. Religion is. There's got to be a way for people sometimes to band together to be in some kind of more controlled environment, just for society's progress. And there are many aspects of all religions that are wonderful. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up keeping the part of my religious upbringing that I appreciate, that kind of solitary meditative rituals. I kept them, and the things that do not resonate with me, I had to move to the side, which is exactly when I was reading so much and researching. I did the exact same thing. You read, thousands of pages to get one page of something that really is meaningful and impactful sometimes. So or like if you're producing a show, you might have to do 100 hours of tape to get an hour of something that's valuable. So it was the same thing in religion and spirituality. You have to sort of, for your own self, take everything in that you can and then boil down to what you feel makes sense. And I'll say for you, so it makes sense to you yourself. Now, in my case, I happen to share it and it makes sense to others also. Maybe it doesn't make sense to everybody. But even if you don't share it, you have to really live your life in a way that makes sense for you.
Makes me think of meatloaf. And you were like, what? And your great grandmother's meatloaf recipe isn't what your grandmother made. It's not what your mom made. It's not what I make. It's probably not what my daughters make or my sons. But it's how we like our meatloaf,
Right.
And it's still meatloaf.
Right.
It still has a purpose, but
Right.
it's not what was passed down. I don't have to make it the same way because maybe I like it a little more onion or more. I like to put more ketchup, whatever. Just,
That's absolutely true. And it's true of everything. I mean, they're even finding it with disease, you know what I mean? Like with the researchers looking into, physical diseases and cancers and things like that. They're very individual. Not everybody who has breast cancer has the same breast cancer. They're now drilling down to, the genes and the DNA strands, and everybody is individual. Treatments are becoming more individualized for illnesses. And everything is very individual. And there are grains of similarity throughout all of these things. But at the end of the day, everything is very individual. When after I put the book out, one of my girlfriends said to me, geez, your mother-in-law must have been such a strong person, because she started my afterlife journey. And I said, she was strong, but I don't know that she was so much stronger than others. I don't know. And she said, well, you two must have been so close. And I was like, well, we were close. I mean, I don't know that we were so much closer than other, in-law kinds of situations, or even mother-daughter situations. I don't know. And she said, well, then why did she pick you to come through to? And I was like, I don't know. And then a little while later, she came to me, she goes, I figured it out. It's because you're an accountant, and she knew you'd write that book. And I was like, something, you're right. I was able to take the bands of similarity that came through to me during that time of where I was entrenched in everything metaphysical. I took those bands of similarity and I was able to elaborate on them just enough to make them understandable for people, for me, and then for anybody else. And I came up with all kinds of little analogies and things like that. And I think, I was able to share it. So, so that's sort of what I did.
how did your mother-in-law first approach you?
So she approached me through my daughter. My daughter was 13 at the time, and we had buried my mother-in-law on that Saturday beforehand, October 19th, 2006. And it was the Wednesday after that. And my daughter and I were having breakfast together, and she was going to go to school and I was going to go to work. And she said to me, very matter of fact, I got a sign from Grandma Lucille yesterday, my mother-in-law, Grandma Lucille yesterday. And I was like, really? Now, we had not really spoken about anything afterlife in my house. We just never really spoke about it. And so I was like, you got a sign from her? And she said, yeah, she gave me two pom-poms. I call it the pom-pom story. And I was like, she gave you pom-poms? And my daughter explained that during her art class the day before, the task was to make 3D cards. So she decided to make cards with pom-poms on them. So she went to the community closet, took out the Tupperware of pom-poms, all different shapes, sizes and colors. And she counted out 11 red and 11 green. I never asked her why 11, but whatever, 11 green, 11 red. And she recounted them. She was very meticulous. Even now, she's very meticulous. So she recounted them. The Tupperware again, brought it back to the cupboard. And she said, when I came back, there were my 11 green and my 11 red and 1 lavender and 1 ivory. And I was like, how'd they get there? And she said, I don't know. I would love to have seen it. They must have either floated through I could see she had processed how they got there already, you know? And they either appeared or floated through the air. I said, was anybody else around your table? She said, no, there was a small class of 12 people. They each had their own table. And so I said, so I don't understand. And she said, well, obviously, Grandma Lucille is thanking us for the balloons that we let go at the gravesite. We let ivory and lavender balloons go at the gravesite. They were the same color. And I was just like, really? And she said, yeah, you want to see them? And I said, okay. And so she ran upstairs and came down with 2 pom-poms, the exact colors of the balloons, not even like, you know, purple and white. It was lavender and ivory. And I said to her, all I'm saying is this: if those are really from Grandma Lucille, then when you die, you better be buried with them in your coffin, because that's like a miracle, you know, like. And then I just assumed she was maybe going through some kind of deep grief, and this was a coping mechanism, and maybe she put them there. You know, I again didn't really understand the afterlife, and so I was struggling with it. But the next thing that happened is I was telling friend after friend after friend about the pom-pom story, because I wanted to bounce it off of people to see what people thought and felt. And what I found is, like, so many people have their own stories. You know, like, I'm talking to people about it. Oh yeah, I found a penny here. Oh yeah, the feather here. Oh yeah, my mother this. So, like everybody's got stories. They just don't share them. Yeah. But one thing that really hit me hard was I had a girlfriend. I'm still friends with her. I had known her probably about 10 years at that point. And she lived 2 houses down from me. And we were chatting, and I was telling her the pom-pom story. And she, in a very matter-of-fact way, she waited for me to finish it. And then I think she thought I knew about the afterlife, you know, because she was waiting for my, you know, my reaction to it. And she was like, she just looked at me and she goes, well, you believe in the afterlife, don't you, Annette? Which is the subtitle of my book. You believe in the afterlife, don't you? And I was like, what? You believe in the afterlife? And now I had a second thing. I had a very credible friend who very openly believed in it. And so that was now, maybe there's something else I have to learn about this. But I didn't have to do much thinking, because my mother-in-law was leaving the breadcrumbs. And so my friend told me that she frequented, not often, but every once in a while, a local medium, and she would tap into her deceased father and get real life practical advice. Like, should we sell mom's home now? Or, you know, I'm naming my son X. What do you think of it? And I was like, really? You go to a medium and you connect with your father, who's not, like, that was mind-blowing to me. But she told me the name of the medium, Josephine Garangelli. And so I parked the name in my head. And then about a week after that, because these are the breadcrumbs, a week after that, I was out to dinner with my recently widowed father-in-law and my husband and my son. And we were at a local place in our main street, Farmingdale, New York. And we were seated by a window. And in this big window, there was a poster facing the street, but we could see through it, the back of it. And it said, dinner and show with medium Josephine Garangelli, the medium my girlfriend had just told me about. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's so strange. But that's the way the universe works. Now I understand that. But to me, at that point, it was, what a synchronicity. So I went home and said to my girlfriend, do you want to go? It was in 4 months. So this was now December, and it was going to be in the end of April of 2007. And she said, yes, definitely. We couldn't believe that she was going to be right here in our neighborhood. So I made reservations. We actually brought in another friend with us. So I made the reservations, a net party of 3, and we get to the restaurant at the end of April. And now between December and April, I'm telling everybody the pom-pom story, and I'm starting to hear lots of people in my work life and my personal life, all who have stories. I mean, there was one professional friend who told me that he and his wife at the same time saw his father in spirit. I was like, I mean, this was a professional person in my CPA world, you know?
Yeah, they
So
weren't these weirdo ladies down on the corner getting drunk or whatever. Yeah.
there are people that you wouldn't ordinarily talk to about this topic, you know? And so they're coming up with story, and I'm like, I can't believe this is like, there's something to this, you know? Anyway, so we go at the end of April, Annette party of three, we walk inside, they seat us. Oh, you're over here. There's about 100, 120 people. We all have dinner. And then this medium comes out, Josephine, and she's got a microphone, and she looks really nice. But I'm thinking this is like a magic show, you know, like how cute. And then the first thing right out of the box, she goes over to this family where a firefighter or a police officer died, and they're crying, and she's relating to it. And I'm thinking, oh, they must be her friends or planted there or whatever, you know. And then the very next thing, she comes over to our table. And she said, okay, I have a woman here whose name is Lucille. Now, Lucille was my mother-in-law's name. And she's holding her stomach. She died of something like stomach cancer. My mother-in-law had died of pancreatic cancer. And she's somewhere at the table here. And so I'm thinking, this is impossible. It's not possible that she knows this. So I did not raise my hand. Now my girlfriend's kicking me under the table, like, take the microphone. It's your mother-in-law. And I would not take it. I was petrified. My mind was racing. I made the reservations in that party of three. I haven't paid yet. They don't have my credit card. Did my girlfriend call this woman up? But like, my mind is racing. How is this possible? After about probably 3 minutes, which always I marvel at with mediums. Like, people say, oh, you know, I don't know if they're real. If they weren't real, they wouldn't continue to push down a line where nobody's relating to it, you know, because it's only embarrassing to them if they're not right, you know. So here she was pushing and pushing, somebody with an L, somebody with dark hair. So like, and I'm still not taking the mic. So it's like, if she wasn't real, why wouldn't she just change and back away? But she's going at it and going at it, and, you know,
Like,
and
I know
after,
it's here.
yeah, after like 3, 4, 5 minutes, and I'm not taking the mic, and my girlfriend's glaring at me, Josephine retreats back out, and the woman at the table behind me raises her hand and says, my name is Elizabeth, it has an L in it. So Josephine gives her the mic, and she says to Elizabeth, oh, I see you're going to Italy soon. Meanwhile, I had booked a trip to Italy. So now my mother-in-law's information is going to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, no, I went to Florida recently, you know. So anyway, then she retreats out from Elizabeth. She reads somebody else. And this is pivotal. My mother-in-law would not give up because she's leaving these breadcrumbs, and this was her chance. So she brought Josephine back again. So after now a third reading out there, she comes back again. She goes, this woman is back here. And I'm like, and she said, she's saying her name is Lucille, something with an L. She's holding her stomach. She's got black hair. So now I've got my bravery up, and I'm like, all right, I'll take the mic. I take the mic, and then Josephine says the one line that I was like, I'm done. I'm going to take the reins from my mother-in-law and figure this out. She said to me, how's Rita? Who's Rita? I see Rita's still here, isn't she? Now, my mother and mother-in-law, my mother was Rita and my mother-in-law, Lucille. They were both diagnosed with cancer within a week of each other in 2005. End of 2005, beginning of all of 2006, they both spent fighting for their lives. My mother, we got the crash course in all things cancer, my family. My mother-in-law died. She had pancreatic cancer. My mother had breast cancer. She survived it. She actually died this past April, which is a whole other story. She and my father died after I wrote the book, but she and my father died 2 weeks apart from each other.
Wow.
Married 67 years. Big story.
67 years.
67 years. And there's a big, great story there also, which I can get to, especially with my father, because I asked him to give me a sign, which he did. So before he died, I made a pact with him, and then he came through in flying colors from the other side. But anyway, at that time in 2006, when I didn't understand the afterlife, so my mother and mother-in-law both diagnosed with cancer, both fighting for their lives, chemo, surgery, radiation. Every time we'd visit one or the other, they would ask about the other one. Lucille would say, how's Rita doing? Rita would say, how's Lucille doing? They're always curious because they were going through very similar things. So when this woman, Josephine, has now pegged my mother-in-law's name and my mother's name, which I changed in the book to Margarita, but it's Rita. So when she pegged their names and she said, and she's asking, how's Rita? And Rita's still here, isn't she? I was like, that's it. There is no way this woman can know this. There's just no way.
Common name.
And my mother-in-law knew that if she asked about Rita, how's Rita, that it would trigger that topic of conversation. That's what she was asking down to the point she was dying. How's Rita? How's Rita doing? She's doing a little better, a little, so I was like, so that's
she didn't know she had passed.
And Josephine knew, my mother-in-law knew at the time she passed that my mother was still alive. Okay. But Josephine knew that Rita hadn't passed. So Lucille was telling her, she said, Rita's still here, isn't she? And so that after that evening, my mind was just racing. Now I had gone from the pom-pom story to a credible friend being very matter of fact about it, to this very intense evening. And I was like, okay, I get it. You're still here. In some way, I don't know, big or small, you're still here. I need to get my head around this. And that's what I did. The next 4 years, I went to dozens, if not hundreds, of medium readings, none individual. I wasn't in grief. I wasn't looking for a message from me. I was trying to get my head around the process. And so I went to tons of group situations. I was studying every little thing. I read articles, books. I took classes, metaphysical classes, everything I could get my head around. I needed to understand. I understood very quickly that my mother-in-law was not following Josephine Girangelli around. She was basically with me all the time. And when the medium comes, it opens the portal to your loved ones. They're really right there. It's not like they're coming and going.
Right.
They're just a little energy right there. And so a little different energy. Yeah. So that was so cool to know, because here I think, how many times in my life have I felt alone? And you're actually never alone. You're never alone, ever, And so that was very interesting to me. So when people throughout my life after that were struggling with loneliness, I was like, oh, wait, you're not alone. And just ask the other side to show you something. If they can, they will. They will show you. Ask for something specific. I've asked for so many things at this point. I played around with asking for specific things on specific days and seeing if that would happen. I've asked and done so much with signs that I know that if you ask for something very specific, and if they can give it to you, they will. So an example is, and I have it written in my book, ask. Usually within a couple of weeks, you're going to get your sign. And one of the women in the middle of the United States read my book, and she reached out to me and she goes, I just have to share the story with you because it's so cool. Her brother died years ago, and she now has an 8 or 10-year-old daughter. So the daughter never met the brother. The brother died when he was young. And she said, after reading my book, she said, we're going to ask Uncle Jack, whatever his name was, for a specific sign. What sign do you want to ask Uncle Jack for? And the girl said, I want to ask Uncle Jack for, I'm making the name up because I don't remember the name, Zoe. And the mother said, who's Zoe? And the girl said, last year when Grandma was babysitting us, we were in the backyard, this orange cat came in the backyard, and we had picked it up, and I saw his tag said Zoe. And she said, the mother said, all right, that might be a little too specific since you haven't seen Zoe since last summer, but let's just ask Uncle Jack for an orange cat, an orangish cat. And so and you have to meditate on it, right? So the girl, the 10-year-old girl and the mother who read my book are meditating on this cat. She says the next day the woman goes to put the garbage out, and behind the garbage cans, she hears a meow. She pulls the garbage can. There's an orange cat. She runs in to call her daughter. Oh my God, Uncle Jack already sent the orange cat. The girl comes running out, picks up the cat, and it's Zoe. It's got the same, she goes, oh, and it's Zoe. It's got and I was like, I love it. But that's another thing that people who have been reading my book have been doing. Like when they feel alone or even not alone, ask the other side. Now, the out is that they may not send you what you want in 2 weeks. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get what you want in 2 weeks. But there are sometimes they won't, because the souls are very, very, very polite. And they are all about you finishing your purpose here on earth. That's what they're about. They're not about giving you signs. They're not about consoling you. They're not about making you feel better and feel happy. They want your purpose completed. And if your purpose is going to be in your path, your purpose is going to be interfered with by sending you a sign, they're not going to do it. They're going to want to do it, but they're going to refrain from doing it. And this is the analogy that I have in my book that a lot of people have resonated with, because everybody can sort of visualize it. What I tell people is everyone has seen, especially if you have many children, you've seen, let's say, a 5-year-old meltdown, 3-year-old meltdown. They want something desperately and they can't have it. So let's say there's a 5-year-old and they want a candy bar for breakfast, and they're screaming and screaming that they want that candy bar so much. They're begging you, Mom, please give me that candy bar for breakfast. And you look at them and they're absolutely, so sad. And you empathize with them. You feel really badly, but you have a different perspective. And you know that the candy bar really doesn't mean anything. As an adult, this kid's going to get hundreds of candy bars his whole life. He's going to grow up. He's going to contribute to society. He's probably going to fall in and out of love. He may have kids of his own. He may even get the candy bar after lunch. Maybe his father's going to come down and give it to him for breakfast. But you're not giving it to him now. But you have a different perspective than him. You feel badly, but he's not getting the candy bar. And that's how the other side looks at us. They see us screaming and crying desperately. We're so grief-stricken with their loss, and we want some sign and some symbol, and they mustn't love me if they're not giving it to me. It's like, no. They love you, and they're right there, and maybe they're not giving you the sign, but because they're not going to interfere with your purpose. And if your purpose is going to be hindered in any slight way by you getting this, they're not going to bother giving it to you. Having said that, if it's not going to be hindered with them giving you a sign, they will give you specifically what you ask for. And I learned that during my 4 years because I was testing it out. I was like, let me ask for this very specific thing at this very specific time. If you're here, send me this. And I would get it. And I would be like, this is unbelievable. They really are here. So there's 2 levels. There's actually 2 levels of grief too, right? 2 sort of overarching levels. Number 1 is, can you really believe they're there? If you really believe they're there, if you really believe we go on, that satisfies a large amount of grief. But then there's another level of grief and another level of understanding. The level of understanding is, okay, if we go on, what are we doing here? And the other level of grief is, okay, I believe they're still here, but it doesn't take away the grief. It changes it, because I'm never going to have what I had before. I'm never going to be able to hug them. I'm never going to be able to touch them. I'm never going to be able to converse with them the way I did prior to their passing. So it's wonderful that they're here, but there is still intense grief. So, yeah. I forgot the starting question to that, but it's my long-winded answer to.
My ex-mother-in-law, she wasn't so subtle. She had just passed in the hospital, and I went over and put my hand on her arm, to say goodbye. And all of a sudden, it was like picking up the phone. Yap, 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 yap. I never experienced anything like that in my life
Wow.
or since. I was, and I wanted to put on a poker face because I know relatives are standing there grieving her children, right? And this was, she was ex. Me and her son was already divorced, but we were still close, and so I didn't want to be like, huh, and tell them what's going on. You can't do that. You can't with some people.
Yes,
and
yes.
and so I'm trying to keep a straight face, and she's just like she wanted me to help her come back.
Ah,
What?
really?
And
So
so I had this
she was making
telepathic.
sense.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It was like I
Wow.
put my hand on her arm, and she was just like, want me to help her come back. And I'm like, Mary, I can't help you come back. She just like, was real insistent, and
Wow.
we're having this telepathic dialogue, and I'm like in shock. And so I'm
Wow.
just like trying to look real calm on my face, but meanwhile I'm like chat with Mary, and I'm just like, Mary, I can't bring you back. Like I don't have the power to bring you back. And she has 12 kids, and they're all out in the hallway with their spouses, and
Oh,
but
wow.
some's in the room right across from me, and my daughter-in-law is standing right beside me, and so I'm saying, Mary, I said you had a beautiful death. She had fell and broke her hip and had a massive heart attack, but she was in the hospital dying. But before she died, all 12 of her kids and
Yeah, very nice.
their spouses are around this woman's room. They're saying these Catholic prayers, singing these hymns. What a beautiful death! I'm
Yeah,
thinking, right? And I said, Mary, you had a beautiful death. I never those words never come out of my mouth before. Beautiful death.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
said, now it's I do, and I said, there's nothing here for you but pain. If you would come back, you know, you're not gonna have nothing but pain, and you might be alone when you pass. Don't you want this? I'm trying to, reason with
yeah,
her. And
yeah,
then I said,
right.
"Isn't Pappy there? That's her husband. It's already
Mhm.
passed. Isn't he there? Your mom, your dad, your siblings, all these people I know is passed. Go find somebody. Like
Yeah,
leave me
yeah.
alone."
Uh,
And it was like I had a hold of her arm, but it was like she had a hold of mine.
yeah, yeah, sure.
And so I just pulled my hand off her, and it's like hanging up the phone on her,
Oh, wow.
and I just needed to go. But
You know,
so
they say that with people that are like in industries like hairdressers or massage therapists or people who do your nails sometimes when they're very intuitive like that, when they're touching someone, even the hair or whatever, they
yes.
get that kind of flood from the person of their energy or their dialogue or what's they're thinking or whatever. I've
And I
heard that.
never thought about that until the last couple of years. It crossed my mind. I was always growing up, and probably until the last 5 years, I was not a touchy person.
Oh, interesting.
And I had three boys, but then when we adopted girls, your girls are all touchy feeling, and they're wanting to hug and cuddle, and I was uncomfortable. You know, there was my husband. I showed my affection. Beyond that, there was nobody. I mean, my
Yeah.
boys when they're little, and they get teenagers, like get away from me, mom. And so, we hug my kids, as we're leaving, when we get there and we leave, things like that, but not just. And so so I'm not a touchy person, but then I got thinking about that. When you do hug somebody, now that I'm starting to get closer, or hold somebody's hand when they're upset, you do feel so much stuff that I
Yeah.
didn't know. I thought, is this
You
normal for everybody? Because I didn't know you felt all these emotions that they're feeling and thinking. And
Well, you do because you have that intuitive nature. Like I wouldn't, although I do know still there is an energy pass every time you touch someone. But I don't have anything like that. But somebody like yourself who's very more right brain and intuitive, yeah, that energy flow and that telepathic flow is like,
and
significant.
even eye contact. I didn't make eye contact with people.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
I mean, I've had to look at them, and for a job or whatever, but I just didn't let people in. I had walls, and now that
Yeah,
they've
yeah,
all went crumbling down,
yeah.
it's a whole new
Whole new
world. And like
game.
when you go to the grocery store, it's like I got to watch my eye contact
Yeah,
because I'm really picking up and engaging with people, and then they'll stop and kind of like hold a stare and smile, and I'm like, this is so different world here. Where before
yeah,
it's just like in and out, go do and then when you stop and take the time, it's like, wow, there's so much interaction going on that we're
yeah.
missing out on by
It's
having all
fun.
those
Yeah,
walls up.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's one of the biggest changes that in terms of how I live my life after I've learned about the afterlife. I was more what I would call insulated before, where I was always a kind person. I was never, mean or anything like that. But I was very focused on myself and my family and, my community, very insulated. And thinking as long as I kept my head down and did everything right or good,
Mhm.
that
And
I
cutting
would,
out those bad influences when you're a parent. I mean, you got to focus on your
right.
family.
So, but after I learned everything about the afterlife, I realized, I think sharing is more important than I realized. So I share every opportunity I can, and I look at people in the eye and connect with people, because I think that it's more important than I had realized. I have a friend that his son died when he was, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, I think, or something like that. And my friend's a college professor. And I actually volunteer at an organization called Forever Family Foundation, which our scientific mission is to prove that there's an afterlife. And so my friend is on the board and I'm on the board. So we're both on the board. So his son died. And he said once, very early on, his son in spirit came to him in a dream, and his son was holding a plate with gold apples on it, and he was flying, toward my friend, and my friend was flying backward, holding the gaze of his son and just floating backwards. And every once in a while, the son would tip the platter and an apple would fall, and my friend would look down and it would be the earth. He could see it was going to the earth, and he felt, as a father, he felt protective. So he was like, oh, let's steady the platter, like you don't want to drop all your apples. And after the last apple fell, he was like, now, the father felt concerned, like now you have no apples. And the son looked at him very lovingly and said, no, these are pieces of knowledge, and we drop them to those people on earth when they need them. So, they drop to us pieces of information or knowledge or spiritual growth when we need it, or when, and it was interesting, because what happened to my friend, said, someone asked my friend, it's been decades since your son died. Do you get as many dream visits from him as you used to? And he said, I don't, but I think that he shared more with me when I was in a position to share with others. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I think that they give us knowledge, like the way my mother-in-law, and she enlisted my spirit guides and my uncle and my grandmother. I think they were dropping breadcrumbs for me, not for me, but because they knew I would share it. And so I think I've learned only recently that sharing is more important than people think.
I think that just listen to you talk made me think about. I wonder if like Zoom or Facebook, any kind of social media interaction is helping people that are socially not just isolated, but maybe like what I was saying a while ago, where you're closed off and social anxiety,
Mhm.
because you can kind of test the waters.
Yes, yes, and also people who were totally alone. I mean, I think I mentioned that my parents both died this past August, which is a whole other story. But they were both active on Facebook, and their 96-year-old neighbor was also active on Facebook, and so you have these, elderly people who had, she's widowed and she lives alone. She's still alive, and she posts on Facebook, and okay, she messes up sometimes and posts twice, or likes something that's wrong, or shares something that doesn't make any sense for her to share. But having said that, it's a window to the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a window to other people that she otherwise wouldn't have.
The
So I
social
think you're
interaction, yeah.
absolutely right. I think
Especially
you're
during COVID. I mean, it was a
absolutely
godsend, really, for people to still be able to be connected, see their grandkids or whatever, communicate.
right, right,
And then,
absolutely.
the jobs, my kids are doing their jobs from home now, even
So
though
am I. Yeah, so am I. I mean, we went to a hybrid model, and then when the Omicron variant hit, we stayed remote. So we go in every once in a while when needed, but we found out that we really don't need to come in. So I have a team of about 20 people, and we're primarily remote.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. I had my team meeting this morning actually, and I told them, I was talking about resources for them to take advantage of throughout their workday. And I mentioned that a resource they should take advantage of is office space, because even just to break up your day so that you're not in your same house all the time in the same room, go into the office one day. You can sit at any desk, and just for a change of pace and see people and things like that. So I like when I was in the office, and I like remote also. So I like working. I like my job. So I'm one of
I've
those
heard of
strange
some people quitting those jobs because they miss the social interaction.
Especially, I think so. Yeah, I think a lot of people who are more extroverted in nature, I'm more introverted in nature, but I think people who are more extroverted in nature, if they can't find a job that's in an office, they won't take it.
Yeah.
They'll,
My son and his wife, they're both work as accountants for the federal government, and she's got an office downstairs. She's got an office upstairs, and they just make it work.
right.
So
Right. When COVID first hit, we had my house, we weren't sure what was going on. And my sister and daughter live in Manhattan in the city, in Brooklyn. So, and we live in the suburbs. So they joined us in our house. And so we had 5 adults living here, all different professions, all different places of the house, all trying not to bang into each other's workday. And then my parents lived, they lived 2 miles from me. And we kept them hermetically sealed in their house. We were so afraid for them to get sick. They were in their 90s. So it was just very, very scary when COVID first hit. But you're right, that whole, like, everybody working remotely, it was just very, very different.
I know so many elderly or medically fragile people that got it and got through it just like everybody
Yeah,
else.
yeah, it's true. There's so many people who died though. It's like millions, It's like 6 million or something crazy like that. It's just so many people. But what I learned in terms of the afterlife is, and I learned it from the September 11th victims, is that before September 11th, before they came to Earth, the people who died on September 11th had a pact with each other.
Now, where did you get this?
Well, I actually got it from September 11th victims that were read by mediums at group sessions I was at. So I live in New York, so a lot of times in these group sessions that I was going to,
That's big in New York, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mediums.
yeah, yeah. And what would happen is you'd oftentimes have families in the audience who lost someone during September 11th because we're in New York. So I would say about 3 different times I was in the audience with everybody, and a September 11th victim would come through and would say that they had a pact with other September 11th victims to raise the spiritual awareness of the world. And so that sort of resonated with me, like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, these people coordinated before they came here, those soul contracts.
The pre-birth plan and all that stuff.
Yeah. And so I now understand that that's the same thing that happened with COVID. COVID was this mass exodus, for the most part, of 85-year-olds and over. And so now if you're coming into the world and you get to choose how you're going to go, you're probably going to choose, let me live a nice ripe age, 85, and let me go quickly, a couple of weeks. And that's what COVID did. And it wiped out a lot of elderly people, a lot of non-elderly also. But at the end of the day, COVID was...
Gotta watch talking about COVID. They won't show this video. They'll put a thing on, says consult your whatever for information.
Oh, interesting. But
they'll screen it. They'll screen this whole video and alert for the word COVID. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, to me, I feel like it taught the world a huge lesson on how we're all connected, because it just raced through the world so easily. And people think, oh, we're not connected to other people. You're connected to everybody. It was such an easy thing for it to just race around the world. And it also showed people the power of hugs and smiles. People had to, they're wearing masks. And so I think it was a big learning lesson for those of us left behind.
Yeah.
And we owe, we owe dedication to the people who lost their lives.
Sure.
That's just what I think on it.
Okay. What is the name of your book again?
The name of my book is Your Soul Focus. I have it here, although I think if I hold it up, it'll be reverse on the screen.
It looks fine.
It looks good. Okay, so Your Soul Focus, and there's my subtitle. You believe in the afterlife, don't you? Which is what my girlfriend Maria said that started the whole thing. I was like, oh my goodness. So, yeah, and then another interesting thing is one of the women who read my book, she lives in Canada, and she decided to put together what you called an afterlife anthology. So she asked people from all over the world to contribute a chapter, some of them authors like myself, but some of them not authors. And she took, I think, 35 or 40 people. We each wrote one chapter. So I donated a chapter, like I'm chapter 6. And all the proceeds go to mental health and afterlife charities. And we published it. It's called Gathering at the Doorway. And we published it also like on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. This past May it came out. So I have a chapter in that book also.
Okay. Okay. If you want to send me links to those books,
Sure.
I'll put them in the
Absolutely.
description. And
Yeah, and to my website. I have a website, AnnetteMarinaccio.com, and the only thing that is on there besides all my interviews is the book. Like it's not like I have a really great job that I love. So the book was more a passion situation, just to sort of get the word out. So I think the more people living with knowledge of the afterlife, the better off the universe is. But I have my book on there, and then I have all this content on there, which is great because people can link to other people who do interviews with a lot of people.
right. Well, thank you very much. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. It's been lovely spending the afternoon with you, and I look forward to the interview being posted.
Okay. It'll be later tonight, probably early morning.
Okay, cool. I'll send you the links.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Peggy, and it was great meeting you after our
Yeah, a sound
technology.
problem.
Technology.
I think it's on my end. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.